NBA free agency opens tomorrow, and the Mavericks, they're going to be, looking at the edges, free minimum guys, maybe slightly more than minimum, depending on how much of the mid-level that Derrick Jones Jr. takes. But assuming he takes the full, you're kind of working with vet minimum guys. Harrison Graham, Jeffrey Cooperstein here. We got 10 players that we're going to keep an eye on as free agency is set to open. But Coop, we want to hear from the audience first. Name a player that you guys want the Mavericks to sign.
Yeah, if it's Klay Thompson or if it's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope or if it's Dennis Smith Jr., who we're going to talk about later, let us know down in the comments. Some interesting names out there on the free agent market that the Mavs could use and get better and try to make it back to the finals this year.
Full disclosure, we're filming this Friday afternoon, so it's possible Derrick Jones has already been re-signed. Just want to add that caveat. Okay, let's start with Pat Beverley. Listen, does his game probably command more than the vet minimum? I would say so, but he has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way over his career. He exited in very ugly fashion this year, launching a basketball at 2 fans or whatever it was. Like, he might just be a vet minimum with a contender guy. Like, it wouldn't shock me. And listen, the guy's annoying. He pisses me off, but you love him when he's on your team.
Absolutely. And he's also suspended, I think, for the first
4 games.
4 games? Yeah, exactly. So he won't be ready right away. But, man, Pat Beverley wins everywhere he goes. And if the Mavs were to end up with him as their bench backup guard, completely fine with it. He would offer some defensive tenacity as well. He'd get in there. I think, and also what's important, I think he would hold Luka accountable for some of the things that maybe Luka isn't held accountable for on this roster. So I think he brings that aspect as well.
Yeah, and I'll add this, kind of an insurance policy if Dante Exum doesn't repeat what he did last year. Like, you at least know Beverly's going to be a decent catch-and-shoot three-point guy, and he's going to defend 1s and 2s. So we'll see if that's a possibility. There's been interest in the past. I think he could help. I really do. How about Payne? He's had an interesting career. Obviously found his footing in Phoenix a few years ago. Played pretty well with the Sixers last year after getting moved there.
Yep.
Is he going to command more than the vet minimum? He certainly could, but if not, more of an offensive bench guard addition. He can shoot a little bit. He can dish. Wasn't he on the Mavs Summer League team way back when?
He was, yeah. The Mavericks had a chance to get Payne a couple of times, so they've had interest in him before. Another guy similar to Beverley who's just your bench guard off the bench who can shoot a little bit more. Payne probably offers you a little more offense.
He can create a little bit as well for others.
Yeah, and he also has pretty cool dances, and he would be the guy in the starting lineup that everyone gives the handshakes to. So he's a vibes guy as well.
How about Nick Batum as you go to the front court? Like, this guy, toward the end of his time in Charlotte, Coop, he was a beneficiary of that 2016 offseason where everybody got paid. And by the end of his time in Charlotte, it's like, all right, this guy's going to just move back to France, play overseas, and call it a career. Well, he revitalized himself with the Clippers, played pretty well with the Sixers last year.
It's crazy that he's still playing.
And he's still solid.
Yeah.
He can hit open shots. He's a good passer as a forward, and he can defend multiple positions.
The Sixers were relying on Nick Batum in the playoffs last year to make shots.
Do you want to have to rely on him? No, but if he's your 10th guy in a playoff rotation, hey, we're depending on a certain matchup, we need some length here. There's worse options out there. So I don't mind this. The Mavs have a history with international guys, so I could see this being a possibility.
Yeah, I've always liked Batum the player, and I think it's never a bad idea to bring in some veteran experience who's kind of been there and done that in this league. A familiar face, Dennis Smith Jr. had a pretty good year with Brooklyn last year. What's interesting about Dennis is he's turned himself into a really good defensive point guard.
Yeah, he's transformed his game because he's never been able to develop a three-point shot. If anything, it's gotten worse throughout his career, but he's one of the better on-ball defensive guards now.
Yep.
I mean, it's been cool to see. It's really the only reason he's still in the league because, he came in as this high-flying, high-upside offensive player, and that's not really who he is anymore. He's still a good athlete in the open court, but he's not a good shooter. But he can lock people down defensively. I think as a situational guy off the bench, you're not going to play extended minutes with him because of his lack of shooting, but look, if he wants to come back, I mean, obviously, like, a lot has changed in the organization since his ugly exit. Like, I think he'd be open to it, and I wouldn't hate it either.
Yeah, and he has a good relationship with still people on the Maverick staff, God Shamgod and Daryl Armstrong. Dennis has a great relationship with, and he looks up to those guys as well. So the Mavs kind of have an in there. If they wanted to get Dennis Smith in this year's free agency, I think that Dennis would be very interested in a return.
How about Jeff Green, Coop? Now, he's got a team option, so we'll see what Houston does there. But if not, I kind of put him in the Batum category. Maybe not quite as impactful, not as versatile, but, like, he could still knock down open shots. He's got a pretty decent, like, baseline face-up game. And, you know, a passable defender that can defend threes and fours. Probably not in a playoff rotation at this point in his career, but 2 years ago for the Nuggets, he had a real role for that team off the bench. I mean, they missed him and Bruce Brown, I think, a lot this year. So we'll see what Houston does there. Again, they have a team option and probably would exercise it, but if not, I wouldn't mind him on a one-year vet min.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Free daily Mavs content and all the latest news and rumors. If the Mavs sign somebody or make a trade here in NBA free agency, we will have you up to date. So hit that subscribe button and be sure to tell your friends to get it out to as many MFFLs as possible. Myself and Harrison are real Mavs fans, and we're just trying to bring you the realest Mavs content here on YouTube.
All right, 5 down, 5 more. Another familiar face, Jae Crowder. His play has kind of slowly declined for probably about 3 years now. Really since, ironically enough, Coop, that awful series he had against the Mavs 2 years ago in the year the Mavs beat Suns in 7. He was terrible. And he hasn't been a bad player since then, but I think like that was the last year he had a huge role on a team. But is a bench wing 3-4 type, like he can still guard. He's a good enough shooter still. Like, again, like 9th, 10th guy in your rotation potentially. Like I don't mind that at all.
You can see a theme with these. It's veteran guys who have been there and done that throughout their careers in the NBA, and they provide a specific role. This next guy, Douc McDermott, another familiar face, even though he spent 20 games with the Mavs. Those 20 games got him paid about $20 million in this league.
Dougie McBuckets, baby.
He can still shoot at a pretty high level. He played a little bit in the postseason for Indiana, but he didn't provide that much of a role.
This is more of a help you get through the regular season, load management nights. He can shoot the basketball still. He's terrible defensively, so he's probably not in a playoff rotation. But I think playing with Luka and Kyrie, he'd shoot a very high percentage from 3. So, again, over the course of 82, Coop, you need most of your 15 guys to play at some point, so he could certainly help you do that. Now, Markieff isn't going to play hardly at all, but we have to include him because we know his value in the locker room. Does he want to keep playing?
100%.
We'll see. But wanted to mention him. And how about his brother?
Sure.
I think his brother still play a little bit.
Now, there would have to be a public apology of sorts to Mr. Doncic.
Maybe Markieff can a little introduction there, mediate.
Yeah, there might have to be something there. But, yeah, I think Markieff Morris can play a little bit.
Still could shoot the ball.
I definitely would have to go delete some tweets about him as well in order if the Mavs were going to sign him. But, sure, I would take him as – I like guys with size. I think the more guys you have with size, the better. Markieff Morris, about 6'9", and can shoot it a little bit, so he still has some value here in this league.
How about this as a wild card? Evan Fournier, the contract was a disaster in New York. He had a good first year, then after that he fell off a cliff.
Well, and Tibbs just refused to play.
Yeah, he doesn't play defense, so that he wasn't a Tibbs guy. But kind of like in the McDermott thing, it's like you don't just forget how to shoot.
No.
Like, I wonder about him. I also wonder, like, could he just go to Europe and, like, play there for 5 years and call it a career?
He'll be on France's Olympic team this year, so I'm curious to see how he plays there when he probably will get some playing time in that scenario. But, yeah, I think scorers always know how to score, and I don't think, like you said, Fournier forgot how to score. It's just he hasn't played very much.
He just wasn't a good fit. Yeah, the last 2.5 years, he just hadn't played a lot. So you would think, like, physically, like, he's not like an old 30 whatever he is, like,
and you would have you would be joining a winning team, and maybe he would be okay with having a minimized role on that team as well, as opposed to his previous stops, where I guess the Knicks were a winning team, but he just wasn't playing.
Yeah, it's
I would be curious with Fournier. Yeah, any of these 10 guys, if the Mavericks ended up signing, I think I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, even down to Markieff, like, he's not going to give you anything on the court, but all 10 of those guys would provide some value.
Yep.
And when you're in the vet minimum market, you're looking for something, a guy who can shoot, a guy who can mentor, a guy who can give you some situational defense. And I think all those guys check at least one of those boxes. So we'll see. We'll see how the Mavs kind of bargain bin hunt around the edges. I think the potential bigger moves, other than, again, a Derrick Jones re-signing, which may or may not have happened by the time you've watched this, will be via trade.
Yes.
Because they just do not have the cap space to go pay $20 million for a player. All right, what is the Mavs' biggest need? You could say a player, a position need. You know what's nice about this video? We didn't talk about one center, whereas for years it's always like, well, who's a center they could find?
And it was always Dwight Powell who was still starting. Yeah, thank God.
Dwight Powell's a number 3 in the regular season is fine.
Thank God for Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Yeah, let us know what you guys think the biggest need is down in the comments. If there's enough comments, maybe we do a video on top needs for the Mavericks heading into free agency.
Ooh, I like that.
In the first week of free agency or so. So let us know, and we'll see you guys soon. Free agency just around the corner.